My name's Nathan, and I'm 28 now, but there's a part of me that's been 13 for the past 15 years. That age got frozen in time like a Polaroid, sharp around the edges, full of color, but haunting if you look too long. I don't talk about my childhood much, not even with close friends or coworkers. Most people know me as the calm one in the boardroom, the guy who can handle stress without flinching, who always has a solution. But if they knew where I came from, what I crawled out of, they might understand the reason why I keep a toothbrush and a change of clothes in my office drawer, just in case the world decides to spin backwards again. It started the summer before 8th grade. My mom, Tanya, had been acting strange for months, more distant than usual. I was used to her being cold, but this was different. She'd stopped cooking entirely and was out of the house more often than not. Sometimes I wouldn't see her for a couple days at a time, just a text saying, "Food in the freezer." Don't be lazy. There never was food in the freezer. Half the time, the power was off anyway. I'd learned to live on peanut butter and crackers, and I knew exactly how long you could stretch a gallon of milk past the expiration date if you didn't sniff it. Our place was a one-bedroom apartment near the freeway, with a view of nothing but concrete and broken glass. She took the bedroom. I had the couch. That summer, I didn't go to any camps, didn't ride bikes with friends, didn't even have friends anymore if I'm being honest. Most of them had parents who didn't want me around once they figured out my mom never came to pick me up on time, or at all. I stopped getting invited. Eventually, I stopped checking my phone. Then one day, she came home with a guy I'd never seen before. He had tattoos crawling up his neck like ivy and a cigarette tucked behind his ear, even indoors. They were both laughing about something I wasn't a part of. She tossed her keys on the counter and said, "Pack a bag. Quick." No explanation, just those 3 words. I remember looking at her, trying to make sense of the sentence. "Why?" I asked, blinking. She rolled her eyes like I was stupid for asking. "You're going to be staying somewhere else for a while. It's not working out here." That's when she told me, flat out, no hesitation, that I wasn't really her son, that I was just a mistake from a fling with her ex, and that she tried, but she just couldn't keep doing this. Like I was some project she'd taken on and grown bored with. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My ears were ringing too loudly. I went to my corner of the apartment, grabbed a trash bag, and stuffed it with the only clothes I had that didn't smell like mildew. She drove me to a shelter downtown, a place I'd passed by a few times but never thought I'd end up in. It had a flickering neon cross in the window and a line of people out front that seemed to stretch forever. She didn't even pull into the lot, just slowed down enough for me to hop out. I stood there, holding that trash bag, watching her taillights disappear into the heat haze of the road. She never looked back. That night, I slept in a cot next to a man who talked in his sleep and a kid younger than me who wouldn't stop crying. I didn't blame him. I wanted to cry too, but the tears wouldn't come. Something inside me had shut off. Something I wouldn't fully find again until years later. Life didn't get easier, but it got clearer. I moved through the system like a shadow, foster home to foster home. Always the quiet one. Always the kid with the eyes that looked too tired. But I worked. I studied. I got scholarships, scraped together grants, did every side job I could find that wouldn't get me kicked out of school. By the time I hit 22, I'd earned a computer science degree with honors. And by 25, I'd launched my own tech company, a startup that grew faster than I ever expected. I never put my name front and center. I didn't need to. I wasn't chasing fame, just distance from the past, from her. I never searched for her. Not once. I didn't stalk her social media or ask around. As far as I was concerned, Tanya had vanished the second she drove off that day, and I was fine with that. At least, I thought I was. Then, 3 weeks ago, my assistant buzzed me on a Friday afternoon. "Hey, Nathan, there's someone here who says she knows you. She's asking for a meeting, says it's urgent. Her name is Tanya." I froze, literally stopped breathing for a second. That name had become a ghost in my head, something I'd buried under years of silence and therapy. "Tanya," I repeated, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. "Did she say her last name?" My assistant hesitated. "She said you'd understand. And she looks rough. Should I tell her you're unavailable?" I stood up slowly, every inch of my body tightening like a coil. I wasn't sure what I felt, rage? Confusion? Some bitter cocktail of everything I'd locked away. "No," I said finally. "Let her wait." And I did let her wait. For 45 minutes. I went about my day pretending not to hear the buzz in the lobby, pretending not to picture her sitting there, maybe fiddling with her nails, maybe wondering if I'd even remember her. Finally, I walked out of my office and saw her. She was thinner than I remembered, older too. Her hair was streaked with gray and pulled back in a ponytail that looked like it hadn't seen a brush in days. She was wearing a blouse that didn't quite fit and shoes that looked like they hurt to walk in. But it was her, my mother, or the woman who used to be. When our eyes met, she stood up with a weak smile, like we were about to catch up over coffee. "Nathan," she said softly, like my name was some sacred word. "It's really you." I didn't smile, didn't blink, just crossed my arms and stared. And that's when she said it. The words that set something off in me I didn't even know was still there. "I heard you run this place. I was hoping maybe you had a position for me. Something small. I'm not picky. I just need a chance." She glanced at the receptionist. "I've had some bad luck lately, but I'm getting back on my feet." Something inside me cracked, but I didn't show it. Not yet. I was going to take my time with this. Let her squirm. Let her explain. Let her tell me exactly what she thought I owed her after all this time. Because I wasn't 13 anymore. And this time, she wasn't the one holding the keys. I didn't say anything at first. I just tilted my head and looked her up and down like I was scanning a resume. Because in a way, I was. Tanya didn't seem to know what to do with the silence, so she kept talking. "You've done well for yourself," she said, eyes flicking around the marble lobby like she was trying to soak it all in without looking too impressed. "I always knew you were smart. You used to read those computer magazines, remember? I used to tell people, my boy's gonna be a genius one day." She laughed like we were sharing a fond memory, like she hadn't once told me I was a burden she never asked for. I stayed still, let her fill the space. People like her, people who rewrite history in their favor, can't stand silence. They start filling it with whatever fantasy suits them. Eventually, I said, "What happened?" Her smile flickered for a second, but she caught it fast. "Life. You know how it is. Rent's through the roof. Jobs are hard to come by. I've been trying. I really have. I even went back to school for a bit. But it's hard when no one gives you a chance." "Didn't you have a boyfriend?" I asked, voice flat. "The one with the neck tattoos?" She blinked. "Who?" "Oh, Dale. That was years ago. We're not together anymore. Things ended, not great. I could have dug deeper, but I didn't. I just gestured toward the hallway that led to a small interview room near the back of the floor. "Let's talk in private." She brightened, clearly thinking that meant progress. "Of course. That's very professional of you." She said it like I'd passed some test of basic decency she never once modeled herself. We walked in silence, and once the door closed behind us, I sat across from her, fingers steepled like I was meeting any other applicant. But she didn't treat it like an interview. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, speaking with that fake intimacy people use when they think they still have power. "I've been living with your Aunt Mel for a while, but she's got her own problems." I didn't want to say anything, but she mentioned you don't really keep in touch anymore. "That's a shame. Family should stick together." I snorted before I could stop myself. "That's rich." Her brows furrowed like she didn't understand. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You left me. In front of a homeless shelter. With a trash bag. You want to talk about family now?" She sighed, like I was being dramatic. "Nathan, that was a long time ago. We both said and did things we regret. I wasn't in a good place. I was overwhelmed. I was a single mom trying to make ends meet." "You weren't overwhelmed," I said, cutting her off. "You were just done, and you made sure I knew it." She flinched, then shifted gears like flipping a switch. "Okay, fine. Maybe I wasn't the perfect mother, but I still gave you life. I still put food on the table. When you remembered to pay the power bill, sure." That's when her tone changed. The sweetness curdled, and her jaw tightened ever so slightly. "You're not going to punish me forever, are you? Look, I came here to ask for help, not a lecture. I need a job. I'm trying to rebuild. Isn't that what you always wanted? For me to be better?" The way she twisted it around made it sound like this was something I had asked for, made my stomach turn. I'd spent years learning how to undo the knots she tied in my mind. Therapy, journaling, late-night walks through empty neighborhoods with music blasting in my ears. And yet here she was, trying to tighten the ropes again. I didn't respond right away, so she leaned back, arms crossed. "I'm not asking for a handout. Just something simple. Receptionist, maybe? I used to work phones, you know." I didn't laugh. I didn't say used to, like she had a clue what our receptionist actually did. I just studied her face, her tone, her posture, every tiny sign of entitlement that had never really left. She wasn't here for redemption. She was here because she thought she could cash in. And then, without warning, she added, "I told your little brother you might help. He was excited to maybe meet you." My entire body went still. "Little brother?" I repeated. "Oh, right." She waved her hand like she'd forgotten to mention it. "He's 11. His name's Mason. I had him with Greg. He's out of the picture now, too. Mason's a good kid. You'd like him." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. This woman had a whole other child, another life, and the first time I was hearing about it was now, when she needed something. And she had the audacity to dangle the kid in front of me like bait. A brother. A maybe. A guilt trip with freckles and a school backpack. "You brought him into this?" I asked slowly. "I didn't bring him anywhere. I just thought, maybe you'd want to meet. Maybe you could be a role model or something." She said it like it was a gift, like I was being offered something valuable. But all I could see was a kid sitting on a couch somewhere, maybe waiting for a mom who rarely came home. A kid who didn't know yet what it felt like to be left behind with nothing but a trash bag and a memory. I stood up. "This isn't an interview. You don't qualify for anything here." Her face darkened, like a storm cloud moving in. "You think you're better than me now?" she said, her voice rising just enough to draw stares through the frosted glass. "You think just because you have some fancy company and a nice watch that you get to act like you didn't come from me? I made you. You wouldn't be here if it weren't for me." There it was, the core of it. The rot. The belief that she still owned a part of me just because she birthed me. That giving me life somehow meant she could take pieces of it whenever she pleased. I opened the door without saying another word. "You'll regret this," she snapped. "You think you're untouchable, but you're not. You'll come crawling back when you need family. Just wait." But I didn't look back. Not this time. And I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. She wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The following Monday started like any other. I was up early, reviewing reports in the quiet calm before the office buzzed to life. For a while, I actually convinced myself that Tanya had gotten the message, that the storm had passed. I even slept better that weekend, like some shadow had finally stepped back into the dark. Then HR called me. "Nathan," Marie said cautiously, her voice laced with the kind of politeness people use when they don't want to be the messenger. "We had someone come in this morning claiming they'd been offered a receptionist position. She said she was told to report for onboarding today." I already knew who it was before she finished the sentence. "She said you personally hired her," Marie continued. "Her name's Tanya. She says she's your mother?" For a moment, I didn't respond. My hands curled into fists on the desk. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Tell her there's been a mistake." Politely. "Then escort her out of the building. She's not to be allowed back in." Marie hesitated. "She's being difficult." Of course she was. I left my office without another word, heart pounding, walking briskly toward the reception area. And there she was, standing behind the desk like she owned the place. My actual receptionist, Lauren, was standing to the side, looking utterly baffled while Tanya smiled and tapped away on the keyboard. "Oh, honey," Tanya chirped when she saw me. "There you are? I told them you'd clear everything up." She had printed a badge, a fake one, with our company's name and her name under it, and a made-up job title, Office Admin Support. She wore it proudly on a lanyard she must have fished out of the lost and found. She looked completely at ease, as if this were her grand return, not a delusion made real through sheer audacity. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice low sharp. She blinked innocently. "I just wanted to get a head start." I figured, why wait for paperwork when I can prove myself right now? "You said I wasn't qualified, so I thought I'd show you what I can do." "That's initiative, Nathan. You lied to my staff. You impersonated an employee." She laughed. "Don't be dramatic." Lauren stepped closer to me, lowering her voice. "She told security she had an appointment with you. She even used your full name. Said she was authorized to be here." I could feel the temperature in the room shift. Other employees were starting to notice, peeking out of offices, whispering behind half-closed doors. And Tanya just stood there like she was the hero of a rom-com, crashing into my life with charm and grit. "You need to leave," I said, barely keeping my voice from cracking. She rolled her eyes. "Why are you making this so hard? You think I want to be here? You think this is fun for me? I'm doing this for you, Nathan. For us. We can rebuild something here. We can be a family. I can help." "This isn't about family," I snapped. "This is about boundaries." And you don't respect them. Her smile finally dropped. So what, now I'm banned? Just like that? After everything I've done for you? You abandoned me, I said. You left me to rot in a shelter and never once looked back. And now you think walking in here with a lanyard makes that disappear? She looked like she wanted to scream, but instead she grabbed her bag and stalked toward the elevator. You always were ungrateful, she muttered. You think you're better than everyone just because you made some money. You're still the same scared little boy, Nathan, still trying to prove you're worth something. She left, but the damage didn't. That afternoon, I found out she'd accessed our internal directory while behind the front desk. She had logged into the system under a generic staff profile and pulled up information on multiple employees, including me. Home addresses, emergency contacts, personal files. She hadn't just wandered in for attention. She'd come to dig. I reviewed the security logs myself. I saw the exact timestamps, the IP address from Lauren's workstation. Tanya had copied several files to a USB drive she'd slipped from her purse. It was only dumb luck that our IT system flagged the activity as suspicious. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known until much later. I called the police, but the fallout spread faster than I could contain it. Word got around the office. Some staff started wondering why this woman had so much nerve, why she used my name. One even asked me, in a private meeting, if everything was okay at home. I told them it was a family matter. I lied. Again. But then the real betrayal hit. A week later, I got an email. Anonymous. No subject line. Just a screenshot attached. It was a private message board. Some kind of local gossip forum, mostly used by people trying to expose corrupt landlords and bad restaurant managers. And there it was. My name, my company, my past, all laid out like a tabloid story. The post read, "Don't trust my company. I used to know the CEO when he was a teenager. He's not what he pretends to be. He abandoned his mother, even after she gave him everything. She sacrificed her life for him. Now he pretends she never existed. She asked for help, and he threw her out like garbage. This is who's leading your tech companies now." There were comments underneath, some from burner accounts, defending the mother, calling me cold, a fraud, even a narcissist. Others asked for more information. It wasn't viral, but it was enough to sting. I knew exactly who wrote it. Tanya had turned public sympathy into a weapon. She was trying to destroy me in the court of opinion, not because she wanted justice, but because she couldn't stand that I said no, that I moved on without her, that I built something without needing her permission. And she wasn't finished yet. I didn't sleep that night. It wasn't just the forum post, it was what it represented. Tanya hadn't just come back into my life to ask for help. She'd come back to dismantle it. She wanted to pull the walls down from the inside, brick by brick, until I was nothing again. And the worst part? She was good at it. She knew how to play the victim. She knew how to weaponize the few facts she had. She didn't need a full story, just enough truth to make the rest believable. The morning after the post went up, I walked into the office and immediately felt the shift. A few people looked away when I passed. Some whispered in the kitchen, voices low but glances too obvious. My assistant, Riley, who'd been with me since the early days, gave me a strained smile. "You saw it, right?" she asked, voice gentle. I nodded. "Yeah. Do you want me to put out a statement? We can spin it as a misunderstanding. Say someone impersonated her and we've taken steps." "No," I said quickly. "Not yet." Truth was, I didn't know what I wanted yet. Every instinct told me to fight, to go public, clear my name, drown her lies in facts. But another part of me, the part that still remembered sleeping on shelter floors and reading textbooks under flickering streetlights, wanted to disappear, wanted to walk away and start fresh somewhere no one knew me, just in case she came back again, louder. That day, I stayed late in the office. I didn't answer calls. I didn't reply to emails. I just stared at the walls of glass and steel I had built around myself and wondered if they were as solid as I thought. For the first time in years, I felt exposed. Not because of what I had done, but because of who I used to be and who she still saw when she looked at me. By the end of the week, HR brought more news. "We've received 3 anonymous complaints," Marie said delicately, "all alleging that you used company funds for personal expenses, hired unqualified friends, manipulated employee bonuses. It's all unsubstantiated, but the timing is suspicious." "Of course it is," I muttered. Tanya was throwing spaghetti at the wall now, seeing what would stick. But it was working. My name was under review by the board. I had to freeze all hiring and postpone our expansion deal. Suddenly, my credibility, the thing I'd fought tooth and nail to build, was up for debate. And then, like clockwork, came the final hit. Late one night, after a 12-hour grind trying to fix the company's public image, I got a knock at the door. Not an email, not a text, a knock. When I opened it, a thin boy stood in the hallway. Freckles, dark hoodie, hands fidgeting with a backpack strap. "Are you Nathan?" he asked, voice uncertain. My heart stalled. He didn't say his name. He didn't have to. "Mason," I said quietly. He nodded. I ran away," he said. "She said you were rich, that you'd take care of me." The silence stretched so long, I could hear the elevator humming at the end of the hall. I let him in, gave him water, sat him on the couch while I called the police to report him safe. I didn't even ask how he found me. Tanya probably fed him enough breadcrumbs to make it happen. I told the officer I'd wait until they came, and I sat there beside Mason, watching the way he kept glancing at me like he was trying to find answers in my face. "She said you were my brother," he whispered. "Is that true?" I nodded slowly. "It is." "Did she leave you too?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. When the officer finally arrived to take him home, Mason hesitated. He gave me this look, part scared, part hopeful, and said, "She said you hate her, that you think she's trash, but she said you'd forgive her, 'cause she's family." I didn't know what to say. I just walked him to the door, nodded to the officer, and closed it behind them. Then I sat in the dark for a long, long time. That night marked a turning point. I realized Tanya wasn't just sabotaging my reputation or my company. She was trying to pull me back into her world, into her chaos. And she was using Mason to do it. That was the final straw, not the lies, not the gossip, not the smear campaign. It was her dragging that kid into it, turning him into a pawn like she used to do with me. So I started planning. Not revenge. Not yet. But something deeper. Something slower. I started pulling files. I called my lawyer. I began documenting every interaction, every message, every incident. I made copies of security footage, IT logs, witness statements. Not because I wanted to strike back, at least not then, but because I knew it wasn't over. Tanya wouldn't stop until she hit something she couldn't move. So I was going to build that wall, brick by brick. And when the time came, she'd find out just how high it went. For the first time in weeks, I took a full breath. Not because the storm had passed, but because I'd finally stopped trying to outrun it. I'd planted my feet. I'd stared down the wind. And now, I was preparing to weather it on my terms. The morning after Mason left, I came into the office before sunrise. The place was still, quiet. No gossip, no eyes on me, no buzzing phones. I stood by the window and watched the city lights fade into early orange. I remember thinking, this is what control feels like. Not comfort, not peace, just clarity. I made a list. It wasn't a flashy, dramatic to-do list. Just names, projects, legal contacts, media partners. I'd spent years avoiding the spotlight, keeping my personal life sealed off from my success. But now I realized that wall of privacy had become a weakness. Tanya had slipped through the cracks. I wasn't just going to patch them. I was going to build an entirely new structure. First move, I scheduled a sit-down with the board. No lawyers, no damage control teams. Just me, in that glass conference room, sleeves rolled up, portfolio in hand. "I know there have been questions," I said, "and I'm here to answer them. All of them." I laid everything out. No fluff, no defensiveness. The full story, minus the emotional theatrics. The woman who falsely claimed to be hired, the unauthorized system access, the slander online, the complaints filed under aliases tied to her email address. I even brought a forensic IT report confirming that the USB used on our network matched the same serial number as one found in her possession when she was briefly detained after another incident. She'd been caught impersonating a social worker, something I only discovered through background research. The room was silent when I finished. Then, the chairman nodded slowly. "We appreciate your transparency and your resilience." By the end of the week, the board not only reinstated full trust in me, they unanimously approved our next expansion phase. I walked out of that room lighter than I'd felt in years. Second move, I hired a new head of security, not just for the office, but for myself. Discreet, efficient, with experience in corporate surveillance and family protection. He helped me set up alerts for any public mention of my name, scoured my digital footprint, and quietly reached out to moderators of the local forum where Tanya had posted. They took down her thread within 24 hours. Turns out she'd violated multiple community guidelines. But I didn't stop there. We traced her IP activity and found 2 more posts under burner accounts, this time accusing me of tax fraud and discrimination. The lies were escalating, but her tech skills weren't. She'd left just enough digital fingerprints for us to connect the dots. Meanwhile, I began building something else, something longer term. An initiative, a scholarship fund actually, for underprivileged teens in the city. Kids who reminded me of who I used to be, quiet, forgotten, but hungry for something more. I called it the Helix Fund, subtle enough not to draw public attention to my own past, but personal enough to mean something. The press picked it up within a week. The story went viral. Young CEO pays it forward with massive tech education grant. Suddenly, the narrative was mine again. Not Tanya's. Mine. My inbox flooded with messages. Former foster kids. Old teachers. Even a few local reporters who'd once written off my company as another flash-in-the-pan startup. Now they were lining up for interviews. I gave one, just one. In it, I talked about the importance of second chances, about breaking cycles. I never mentioned Tanya. I didn't need to. But the message was clear. Third move, Mason. I reached out through a lawyer. Carefully, quietly. I didn't want to start a custody battle. I wasn't trying to take him away. But I wanted to know more. About how he was living. What his world looked like. What Tanya had been telling him. The report came back quickly. It wasn't great. Mason had missed nearly a month of school. Tanya had moved twice in the past 6 months. She'd bounced between 3 different jobs, all of which ended under questionable circumstances. One neighbor reported yelling late into the night. Another had called Child Protective Services, but no action had been taken due to lack of concrete evidence. I sat with that information for a long time. I didn't want to act out of anger. I didn't want to repeat what she did to me, make decisions based on hurt. So I waited, planned, prepared, and while I did, I kept rising. My company hit its next round of funding, Series C, valued at $190 million. We partnered with 2 Fortune 500 companies and began licensing out one of our proprietary AI models. I was invited to speak at tech conferences in San Francisco, Berlin, Tokyo. For the first time, I stopped declining the invitations. I wore suits tailored to my frame, not baggy jackets hiding who I was. I didn't sit in the back row anymore. I didn't avoid mirrors. Because for the first time, I didn't see her in my face when I looked. I saw me. But success didn't make me forget. It made me sharper, more precise. Because Tanya hadn't stopped. She was still lurking, still emailing old co-workers of mine, still trying to reach Mason through school contacts, still planting little landmines in corners of my life, hoping I'd step on one. But she didn't know I'd been mapping the terrain. Every step she took, I documented. Every lie I logged. And when the time came, when she finally crossed the last line, I'd be ready. Not to retaliate, but to end it. The trap didn't come from rage. It came from patience. By now, Tanya had become background noise, static I'd learned to tune out while I rebuilt, restructured, and rose. But I always knew she was still circling. I didn't need to chase her anymore. I just needed to wait for her to stumble into a spotlight I controlled. And then she did. It started with a voicemail. My lawyer, Peter, left it on a Tuesday morning. Nathan, he said, voice unusually tense. You're going to want to call me. It's about Mason, and something disturbing. I called him back before the message even finished playing. Peter wasn't the kind of man who dramatized. She filed a petition, he said, for guardianship transfer. What? She's trying to name you as Mason's legal guardian. But not in the way you'd expect. She's not surrendering custody. She's claiming you've been involved in his life, and that she wants you to officially assume responsibility. Financially, I didn't speak. I just stared at the floor, trying to connect dots that shouldn't have been touching. She's citing your wealth, your public statements about helping disadvantaged youth. She even mentioned your scholarship fund as proof that you're passionate about supporting family. She's twisting your goodwill into a contract she can manipulate. I leaned back in my chair, mouth dry. So she's not asking to give him up. She's asking to hand off the bills. Peter sighed. Exactly. And if the court buys her version, you could be financially tied to him, maybe even legally responsible, without ever having been consulted. It was clever. Vile, but clever. She wasn't coming through the front door anymore. She was slipping through the cracks, using the system like she always had. She knew if she pushed the right papers, smiled the right way in the right courtroom, she could turn me into a monthly paycheck. Again. But that's where she made her first real mistake. Because she filed in my city, which meant it was my court. And she didn't realize that 2 months earlier, I joined the board of a nonprofit that partnered directly with family services to assist in cases of at-risk youth. Not a vanity seat. A real one. I sat in on panels. I reviewed case studies. I'd even donated $500,000 to launch a pilot program focused on tech education for foster kids. I wasn't just some rich guy with a sob story. I was a vetted, public advocate for child welfare. And family services knew me. So I started digging. Quietly. I had my head of security reach out to a few caseworkers through legal channels. I didn't interfere, just asked if there had been any other complaints or visits tied to Tanya and Mason in the past year. We found 2 unreported incidents from neighbors, one regarding suspected neglect and another about Mason wandering alone near a bus terminal after midnight. Then came the breakthrough. A woman named Cynthia, a social worker with 12 years in the system, agreed to meet off record. She remembered Tanya, had flagged her years ago, but Tanya had always managed to skirt consequences, changing addresses, switching schools, starting over just fast enough to avoid being properly assessed. She's slippery, Cynthia told me, but she's careless when she thinks no one's watching. That was enough. I handed everything over to Peter and let him build the case. Timeline, behavior, digital evidence, testimony. But I wasn't done. The second part of my plan came together when I remembered something Mason had said. That night he showed up at my door. She said you hate her, that you think she's trash, but she said you'd forgive her. 'Cause she's family. Family. The word she kept throwing around like it was currency. That gave me an idea. I went through my old journals. Yes, journals. I've kept one since the shelter days. Mostly as therapy, but sometimes it's how I remember the exact shape of pain. I flipped to the entry from the day I turned 16. That was the day I found out Tanya had tried to claim me as a dependent on her taxes. I didn't live with her. Hadn't in years. But she filed anyway. Said I was temporarily staying elsewhere. She got thousands in returns before the IRS flagged the contradiction when I applied for my FAFSA using a group home address. I never confronted her. I didn't have the power. But now I did. Peter pulled the archived documents, confirmed the fraud, quietly contacted the IRS with our evidence. And then the final piece landed in my lap. A reporter, not some tabloid, a real one, investigative. She'd been researching misuse of scholarship funds and came across the Helix Initiative. She wanted to profile it, me, and how my history as a foster youth influenced the structure of the program. I agreed, but I offered more. I told her about Mason. I didn't say Tanya's name. Didn't need to. I gave her facts, timelines, trends in child welfare cases where financial motives blurred into abuse. I made the story about systems, not vendettas. But she caught the thread and ran with it. The article came out 3 weeks later. The headline read, "The Cycle of Survival, One Tech Founder's Mission to Break It." My face wasn't even on the cover. Mason's was. His silhouette, walking beside a shelter, holding a backpack. It went viral. Within days, family services opened a full inquiry. But I didn't gloat. I stayed silent. I let the machinery of justice start to turn. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. And Tanya? She was still out there. Still unaware that the walls were closing in. Still telling lies to anyone who'd listen. But her audience was shrinking. And the next time she tried to take a step forward, she was going to find the floor gone beneath her feet. It happened on a Thursday morning. Quiet. Clean. The kind of day no one expects to change their life. I was sipping coffee in the office, reviewing our final quarter rollout for the Helix expansion when my phone buzzed with a notification from Peter. No message. Just a single photo attachment. I tapped it open. It was Tanya, sitting in a courtroom hallway, looking disheveled and stunned, her hands clasped tight around a stack of papers. Her eyes were puffy, face pale, mouth slightly open like she'd been caught mid-sentence. Peter's caption underneath was short. She didn't see it coming. 3 hours earlier, she had walked into family court expecting a quick procedural hearing. In her mind, she was handing off Mason's legal obligations without actually losing custody, freeing herself from the burden of feeding him, schooling him, housing him, while still maintaining the title of mother. It was a scheme that depended on two things: me staying passive and the system staying blind. Neither happened. Instead, when she arrived, she was handed an affidavit compiled by Peter. 73 pages. Complete with timestamps, incident reports, video evidence of her impersonating my employee, anonymous testimonies from two neighbors, and a statement from the Child Welfare Nonprofit Board, signed by me, quietly but formally requesting an evaluation of Mason's home environment under Clause 7B of the Child Protection Policy we helped write. She tried to object, tried to bluster her way through it like she always had. But this time, there were rules. There were eyes. There were records. When she claimed she was doing the best she could, the judge asked why she'd attempted to assign financial guardianship without legal consultation from the supposed guardian, me. When she said Mason was thriving, CPS pulled out two school disciplinary letters and a statement from Mason's math teacher about frequent absences and fatigue. And when she insisted she never meant any harm, Peter calmly submitted a signed letter from Cynthia, the veteran social worker who'd quietly watched Tanya dodge accountability for years. It included a history of alias use, rapid address changes, and suspected manipulation of financial aid programs. That's when the judge called a recess. And Tanya realized this wasn't just another slap on the wrist. It was a reckoning. I wasn't there in person. I didn't need to be. Revenge, real revenge, isn't a scene. It's a shift. A quiet turning of the tide so slow and certain that by the time your enemy notices, they're already underwater. Later that day, Peter called to debrief. They're launching a full investigation into her finances, he said. IRS is involved now, thanks to that tax fraud report we slipped in last month. There's enough to keep her tangled for years. And Mason? I asked. They're placing him in temporary care while they assess his options. The court's open to letting you file for permanent guardianship, if you're willing. I said I'd think about it. And I did. But I wasn't rushing. Because for once, Tanya wasn't in the driver's seat. The next day, I got another email. This time from Tanya. No subject line. Just a wall of text. You've ruined my life. I came to you for help, and you turned on me. I don't care how much money you have. You think this makes you better than me? You're still that unwanted little kid no one wanted to pick up from school. Don't forget that. Don't you ever forget that. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded it to Peter and archived it. Fuel for later, if needed. Then I got up, buttoned my jacket, and walked into a planning meeting for our next initiative. One that would partner with 5 shelters across the state to provide after-school coding programs for kids like Mason. Kids like me. And as I stood at the head of that boardroom table, outlining our vision, I realized something. Tanya hadn't taken anything from me. She'd given me clarity. She'd drawn the lines that showed me where I stood and where she'd never be allowed again. But this story, it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about what came after. Fallout came slowly, like winter creeping in after a long autumn. Quiet, inevitable, cold. Tanya didn't get arrested in some dramatic courtroom scene. There were no cuffs slammed on a desk or sheriffs reading her rights. Instead, the consequences came in layers. A formal audit, a notice of tax delinquency, her public benefits frozen pending investigation, letters she didn't understand piling up in her mailbox, each one heavier than the last. She lost her apartment first. The one she hadn't paid rent on in months because she'd been banking on Mason's new guardian to step in. When the eviction notice hit, she tried pleading with the building manager, but the man had heard her promises too many times. You burned every bridge, he told her, before changing the locks. Next came CPS. They ruled her home unstable. The inconsistencies in Mason's education, the multiple incidents of neglect, the financial documents that didn't match her employment records, each detail added weight to a decision already tilting against her. When the social worker arrived to take Mason into care, Tanya reportedly screamed. Not with sadness, not even anger, with shock. She truly believed the world would always bend for her, that someone would always catch her when she fell. But this time, no one did. Mason was placed with a temporary foster family vetted by the nonprofit I worked with. I didn't swoop in right away. I waited, let the professionals do their jobs. He needed time, stability, distance from the chaos he was raised in. But 3 months later, after meeting with him privately and undergoing the required evaluations, I was granted permanent guardianship. When I told him, he didn't say anything right away. He just nodded, like some part of him already knew. Then, Very quietly, he asked, "Do I have to go back?" "No," I said. "You never have to go back." As for Tanya, she disappeared from the public eye. I heard she tried to file harassment charges against me, but they didn't stick. Every message, every document, every fake complaint she'd submitted came back to haunt her. Her own words had become the nails in her coffin. Eventually, her name faded from the office whispers, from the news alerts, from the back of my mind. I moved on. Fully. Mason settled into his new school. He joined the robotics club. One day, he brought home a flyer for a summer coding camp and shyly asked if we could afford it. I smiled. "We're sponsoring it." He stared at me. Then he laughed. That kind of real, belly-deep laugh kids have when they finally feel safe. And I realized something. Tanya had always tried to rewrite my story. Twist it, rip out the pages, and start over, with her version on top. But now, that story was finished. I'd written the ending myself. On the one-year anniversary of the Helix Fund's national launch, I was asked to give a speech at a youth leadership summit. The auditorium was packed. Students, mentors, donors. Mason was there too, sitting in the front row, his backpack stuffed with notes and snacks. Watching me, I stood at the podium and said, "Some people will try to define you by where you came from. Others will try to use you to fix what they broke. But your past isn't your prison. It's your blueprint. And you get to decide what to build." And I meant every word. Afterward, Mason ran up to me, clutching a notebook. "You think I could do what you did one day?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "No," I said. "I think you'll do better." And for the first time in my life, I meant that too. The past was behind me, and I wasn't just walking away anymore. I was leading someone forward.